Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Spinners of Fate. I'm your host, Nell Celestine, and joining me today is a very, very special guest. Bodie, welcome.
Hello.
I know this is the third episode. It took me a while to get here, but, I'm glad that I was able to get you on board for this.
Yeah, I'm excited.
We've been talking a little bit back and forth over Twitter. I've been joining in the Twitch streams. I have to say, I'm really impressed with where the game has been where it's been going and where it's come from. So why don't you talk a little bit about how everything has progressed since the Kickstarter ended?
Yeah, I would say the game actually has progressed a lot since the Kickstarter. It's kind of surprising to me, and I look back on the Kickstarter and I'm like, oh wow, I've come so far since then. So like a big thing that's happened is I've started the way I do the art has changed a lot. Like before, when I would do environments for the game, I was just kind of like doing pixel by pixel art in like iDraw or something. And I just recently, I guess a couple of months ago, probably in like December, I started using a technique called HG index painting from Dan Fessler's blog. And it basically, I get to draw in Photoshop with all of its neat features, and that like during real time gets converted to pixel art, and that's like drastically increased like how good the game looks. And that's really exciting for me because before the game looked good, but now it's looking even better, and I'm super stoked about it.
Not to mention, I can imagine the productivity speed would go up dramatically from that.
Yeah, like there's some things that would have taken me like weeks, and it takes me like a day. It's pretty awesome.
I know, like, I remember back when you did your first stream for this and you were working on that iBoss, how long you were working on the movements and all that, and now I saw you working on some stuff last week and you were just blazing through it.
Yeah, it's pretty insane. It probably won't convert too well to stuff like characters, but bigger stuff like bosses, it might work. Yeah, it's pretty cool. The game also has come a long ways in terms of story. I think I thought I had like the story all planned out, but like as I've been working on it, I've come up with like lots of supporting ideas for it. Like for example, like the current area I'm working on is a forest, which is going to act sort of as a hub for the game, where like you come back to after traveling to other areas that are connected to it. And I decided that I would have like an NPC camp where there's friendly soldiers there who are sort of stranded, and those NPCs will like offer quests, like optional quests, like not something that's like mandatory like WoW or something, and they'll also like offer to sell stuff. But like as I was creating the camp, I realized I was adding lots more lore and story and like depth to the game, and that was really fun for me, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I can imagine, because each of those NPCs then would have to have kind of a backstory as to who they are and why they're there.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny since I've been working on this kind of story universe for so long, like it makes it really easy to come up with backstories. It's kind of like, okay, well, this person, is this their job? And then from there, their backstory kind of falls into place, like where they came from and what kind of stuff they've been dealing with through their life. So that's been fun for me. And something that is also really exciting, as I was working on those NPCs, like their little tiny sprites for the game, I realized that I wanted to have like portraits in the dialogue box when they're talking. So like
Alice Symphony of the Night and stuff.
Yeah, like normal RPGs and stuff. And I saw that the Heartforth Alicia creator, Alonso Martin, he had done like a tweet just looking for portrait artists. And I'm like, hey, I could do that too, but I already know some really good artists. So I went in, contacted one, and she was like super excited to work with me. And the stuff she's been making is it just kind of blows me away. Like being able to hire someone to do like work for your game is it's kind of like getting commissions for like your favorite characters, but you actually get to use it. It's pretty neat.
I know all about getting commissions, as I'm sure you've seen.
Yeah.
But that's not the only person you've hired, from my understanding. Didn't you hire somebody else as well?
Yeah, I got a environment guy to do pixel art. He's the one who actually did the original mines and garden tile set for like the Metroidvania Chasm. And those are all gorgeous, like his stuff. And so I knew that he was going to be good. So he's working on an area that's adjacent to the forest. It's a caves area. But it's a little bit different than most caves, where it's sort of it's humid and kind of it's a warm cave, and so there's going to be a lot of moss and plants there. And that kind of segues, I guess, into I think another topic that you wanted to cover, right? Like what's going on next month, right?
Yeah, like because we talked a little bit now about how things have progressed, but how are things going from this point on is the next question I was thinking of.
Yeah, so I'm finishing up the forest, and then like the next thing on the schedule is to do the caves. And it's going to be kind of weird for me because I've always been in charge of the tile sets, and the tile sets actually take a long time, like probably 2 weeks or more, and that's just for like the base thing and not like total polish. And now that someone else is doing it, it's going to be weird because I'm going to be jumping right into making enemies and bosses instead of yeah. So this is my first time letting someone else do the tile set. It's pretty cool. I think it'll work out well.
Well, I have seen Chasm in action, and I have to agree that his work is phenomenal.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Now, when you say it's like a warm cave, for some reason like you don't have to use this, but this idea popped in my head of what if there was like crystals, luminescent crystals is what's giving off light in the cave?
Yeah, so I guess a bit of a lore is that the planet, the Empire's planet, has the core of the planet emanates heat through the surface. So if you touch the ground, it's actually warm, and that's because I mean it helps the planet be habitable because it's farther away from the sun than, like, say, the Earth is from the sun. Yeah, and there actually are going to be crystals in the cave, but for a different reason, kind of a story reason.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I can't wait to see that being worked on. But, okay, we know that there's the cave and we know that there's the forest. What other sets? I mean, there's the Metropolis as well, but what else have you actually built structure-wise in the game world?
So, you've seen from the demo, there's the Lake Desolation, which is kind of a dried-up lake. And since we're in the past, the next tile set that the artist will be working on is actually the lake in the past. So it's actually going to be very beautiful, a really nice, pristine lake. But that hasn't been built yet. But there's another area to the east of the forest, which is the castle. And there's some tile sets that I've already built for that, but I'm probably going to have to redo them or reapproach them. Now that I have Photoshop behind me, I can do much better. But yeah, so there's going to be kind of a castle curtain. I don't know if you're familiar with the term. It's old castles. They would have like the castle keep, and then around that they would have like two basically walls that encircle the castle. And those are called the curtains, and those are basically just protecting the castle. So that the tile set for the curtains are actually mostly done. And then after that is the actual castle keep, and that'll be very kind of Castlevania-y. And so that's something that I have a tile set for that, but it's not very good, and I'm excited to like totally revamp that.
Amazing. That sounds great. So we got the keep, we got the curtains, the forest. What are some of the future like without spoiling anything, obviously, but what are some of the future areas you're thinking of adding into it?
So the future areas will have kind of future versions of the ones that I just described. But there's one of the tile sets that's already made is sort of a laboratory, a research place, and kind of a factory. And as you've seen, the Empire makes some really weird robots.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where they come from. So that'll be kind of a fun area to see all the weird stuff going on.
Now, there's bird tanks and bird spring bots and stuff, and a cat that's missing the bottom half. I used to ask this in the chat, and I'm going to ask this again here. Are we ever going to fight the other half of that cat boss?
I don't think so. The reason that the cat boss is missing the back part of it is because it was crushed in an avalanche, and so it basically just tore itself from the rocks, and it just keeps going.
Will we ever fight a completed version of it?
I don't know. Possibly. I guess it's not outside the realm of belief that there's another version of it, or they made more than one copy.
Okay. So, we've got a bit about the future, but from your development perspective, how are you foreseeing things coming along for the project as a whole?
They're actually coming along well. It was, before I brought on new people, it was looking kind of like I might be missing my mark because everything took so long to make. But with these new people on board, I think things are looking good. Like, I'm totally on schedule right now, and I'm way less stressed out, which is also good for development.
How many hours a day are you putting into the project?
When I first started after the Kickstarter, I was just like working nonstop, and that actually turns out to be really bad for creativity. When I'm tired, I actually can't really create new things very well. I can only do like kind of busy body stuff or busy bee, where it's just kind of like not really thinking. So I've actually been trying to do around 40 hours a week, but I invariably end up doing more than that. But I try to take like weekends off so that I can like have some sanity days.
Well, yeah, I mean, you are still a person, and this is still technically a job, so you can't go 24/7. That would just be insane.
Yeah, but that'll happen when there's milestones like conventions or something, but not right now.
Speaking of conventions, are you going to any to show off a little bit more of the game, or?
I tried to get into the IGF for GDC, but that didn't happen. Like, I understand. There's a lot of really great games that got in, and that's happening in March. So I'm going to be going to GDC, but not as like a presenter. I'll probably have my laptop around if anyone wants to like check out the game where it is now. My next plan is actually far off. It's in August, which is PAX Prime, or I guess that's technically September. Yeah, so I'm going to try to get into the Mega Booth again. I didn't get in last year, but try again.
Well, by that point, the game should be quite far along, I think, so you should have possibly an alpha by that point, you think?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like, by that time, I'm hoping to have like the beta builds for the beta backers, but before that, there's going to be kind of some alpha builds which aren't like really, you can't play through the whole game, but at least give the alpha backers a glimpse into what the game is like at that point in time.
As an alpha backer myself, I am looking forward to that, I have to say.
Awesome.
But let's move aside from the game development process right now. Something that usually drives at least myself, and I know several other people, to be exceptionally interested in the game, and this is what drove me into really backing the game as well. The lore is what hooked me, from your trailer video to what I was reading in the background. What can you tell us about the lore? Because you haven't really publicly expanded on that at all.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because I have everything in my head, but I don't just kind of forget what I've told people. So like, is there any place you'd like me to start, or is
Oh,
there any particular
let's
people?
let's start with the main character, Linnaeus. I think it's Linnaeus, right?
Yeah.
With Linnaeus is not herself, but her village, her homeland, her world. Let's start there.
Okay, so Lunaeus actually grows up on a planet called Winderia, which is not the same planet that actually the majority of Time Spinner takes place on. It's sort of a pastoral planet where there's a lot of farmland. The planet gets its name from it's a very stormy planet. There's a lot of wind, and so Lunaeus' people, they are kind of nomadic. We haven't settled on the name for their tribe yet, but they don't really settle in one place for long. And the reason being is that they don't really want to get caught by the Empire. And the reason is the reason the Empire would want to catch them is because for generations, they have been keepers of the Time Spinner, or at least the temple where the Time Spinner is kept. And the Time Spinner is something that's just always sort of been there, and people don't really know where it came from, but they think it was sort of an ancient race of people on the Winderian planet that built it on it just seems like a very magical place that like a source of magic that they built the Time Spinner on top of that. And so the Lunaeus' tribe, they protect it, and in times of great need, they use it to go back in time to warn themselves of that trouble and like move their tribe or hide somewhere.
Okay. And then we saw in the trailer that Linnaeus and her mother go and try to activate it, and it looks like things don't go quite as well this time.
Right. It's because the Empire kind of knew that would happen, which is different from every other time they've used the Time Spinner, and so they send soldiers to stop them from using the Time Spinner. And so while Lunaeus' mother, Selin, is activating it, while you're activating the Time Spinner, you kind of sort of create a soul link with it. And so as she's activating it, she's shot by the Empire soldiers and dies. And that kind of ruins the channeling process for the Time Spinner, and the Time Spinner just absolutely like breaks. Like it shatters into pieces, and chunks of it, like the wheels and the gears of it, they go flying into the portal that was opening. And Lunaeus also gets sucked into that portal.
Do any of those soldiers there? Did they get sucked in?
No, they don't. They're far back enough. They don't get sucked in. And you find out later in the story what kind of happened at that place, like inside the temple, after you got sucked in.
Okay. At this point, I don't think we want to go any farther on that subject, because that would start to get into spoilers for the gameplay and story. So,
yeah.
Let's try a different approach then. Because, as we mentioned, the Empire. What can you tell us a little bit about their history and why they're hunting for the Time Spinner and Linnaeus' family that's protecting it?
So the Empire is kind of complicated. So it's the Empire Block EM. Their planet, at least in the present, is absolutely drained of resources, and their leaders are hungry for power and domination of everything. And one of their lead scientists, he's particularly a bad person, and he's responsible for a lot of like the grotesque sort of robots that you've probably seen in the stream in the city. Mm-hmm. And he basically covets basically new technology, and he found out about the Time Spinner through someone else, and he wants that, and that's generally what happened, is that his, like, the army set out to get that. But since the Time Spinner was destroyed, they kind of threw a wrench into their plans.
Okay, well, what about the origins of the Empire? Like, how did it form? Um, who's in charge? All of that kind of information, without spoiling anything, obviously.
So you actually, in the Time Spinner, you get to go into the past and actually kind of experience how the Empire is formed. Um, it's you sort of travel through the first kingdom of Lakiam, uh, and you kind of meet the founder, well the leader, and yeah, let's see, it's a lot of spoilers there. Yeah.
Well, at least now, like, we know that we're going back in time and talking, or at least encountering that. So, in a sense, that would influence a possible time change. So, that would be interesting to see how that affects the gameplay as well.
Yeah.
But other changes, like through traveling back and forth through time, I'm assuming we're not just going to present, future, and past, but probably integers in between.
Actually, I'm kind of staying away from having lots of time periods. So right now there's sort of the present, which is future, and there's the far past, and then there's a third time period. But there's the biggest emphasis is on the present and the past, mainly because those are like the two biggest points in time for the planet of Lakiam.
Okay. Now, when you say the past, like, how far back are we talking?
It would be it's somewhere around like farther than like 2,000 years or something like that. So pretty far.
That would be enough to make significant long-term changes, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what about, is there any notable NPCs aside from the Emperor or Empress, Linnaeus and her mother? Like, anything that's popped up that you've, like, had stand out in your mind? Because, as an example, you've mentioned the camp. What about some rather potentially important NPCs that would show up there?
So the camp, most of the NPCs are just kind of like soldiers that kind of got caught in the war that's happening. So they're stranded and they can't get back to their homeland. And there's a few people, but they don't have that big an impact on the story. Like it's the big players are like the leader of the empire in the past, a woman, and there's the leader of the empire in the present, which is a man. And yeah, but other than that, those are the main characters in the game.
Well, that means you can definitely focus in on that and help really flesh out the story that way. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now let's take a look at the future. What are you thinking is going to happen, like, long-term wise for the project? Like, not just Time Spinner itself, but Lunar Games as a whole going forward.
Uh, Hopefully, if Time Spinner is successful, then I'll be able to go on and make more games for this story universe, which is something I've always wanted to do. And Time Spinner is actually a very good introduction, I think, to the story world, because there's just a lot of stuff going on, and this is just a kind of a small facet of an introduction to the Empire and some of the many planets that actually happen in this universe. And so the next project I want to do something that touches on just another aspect of this story world, which is going to be great, I hope.
Are you going to continue to focus on Metroidvanias, expand outwards?
So the original game that I was making for the story universe was actually an RPG, which is more suited to how meaty, there's a lot of stuff going on. But I think the next game doesn't have to be like that. It could be like a Metroidvania, or it could be something else. I'm not dead set on the genre, but I am dead set on the setting, at least.
Well, I'm pretty sure the game is going to do well. I know I'm super excited. Most of the people that kickstarted are super excited because you got major backing on this. So I'm thinking you're going to hit that potential to make a second one. So are you going to call it Time Spinner 2, Time Spinners, or do you have some other crazy potential name involved?
I think the plan is to get away from the Time Spinner name because it's sort of a self-contained story, and yeah, it would probably have a different name. The names for like the other games that I had been working on when I was like in middle school, they all had a sort of like blank of blank as the name, and so we'll probably do something like that for the next one.
Well, awesome. Is there any other hints, lore, tidbits, or sneak peeks you want to give before we wrap it up for today?
Uh, I think that's about it. Like it's a lot of stuff.
Well, I have to agree. That was a lot of information you gave, and I know I'm super appreciative of it.
I'm glad you like it.
All right, then. Thank you very much for joining, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. Take care, everybody, and if you are interested in this, I will include a link in the bottom below so that way you can go and pre-order the game and possibly get yourself into an alpha or a beta build as well. So that way you can help experience and help make sure that the game goes in an amazing direction. So thank you very much for tuning in, everybody.
Thanks for having me.